And then if you look at in 2008, they did the survey, and this number is somewhat nebulous, but they came up with 251. So there's approximately 17 rooms out there that could come through and be approved, and that's a 7% increase. So then if you drop down to the next column there, that's the vacation rentals and the single unit rentals. Depending again on how you looked at it, there was either 53 or 46. You go across, and this is really a key tenet of this whole discussion. There's been a reduction in vacation rentals and single unit rentals. Depending on how you look at it, again, it's either 10 or 17. And this is a key finding that came out of that 99 Citizen Advisory Committee. These houses need to be returned to the families of Mendocino, and there's an opportunity for you to actually, again, I think, put in your motion today to freeze that part of the chart, and as you did in 1999 with your motion, to keep that static. And then I think the last one is just the totals here, right? So if you were to approve all of the 17 rooms that they've found out there that are in existence today, and they all could prove water and off-street parking and all the rest of the environmental concerns like we have, and obviously that's a hypothetical, you would end up with a 3% increase in visitor survey. Now you have to put that on top of a 14 or 7% increase in residential. So, and depending again how you were counting the data, if it was 287 or 280, you could actually look at it and make a case that there's been there would be zero change if they froze the vacation rentals and added all 17 of those rooms that they found out there. So really what I want to do is show you two options for approving this today. You can either add the 4 rooms, and we can go from 234 to 238. And really this is based on that premise of 56% residential to 44% visitor survey. And then all the data that I just shared with you that shows and supports that increase in residential and decrease in vacation homes. And that would basically, depending on how you look at the data, and this is all in the staff report, I just pulled it out to highlight it for you. You either end up with a 58-42 or a 57-43. And that's an overall reduction in visitor serving. So if we're looking for balance, I think some of the people that are going to get up here today, they should come in right behind us and get their units so that we can bring the balance into parity. Now this is a chart that I took. I modified it just so you could see what actually would happen. The previous chart assumed all 17 people showed up. This chart just shows if the McCallum house got our 4 rooms today, you would be in the -2 and -5% at the bottom. Obviously the residential stays the same. I think as Jared pointed out, this is within the orderly growth tenets that are laid out in the plan. So there's another option, and I just want to throw this out there. And this is something we talked about when we were here in 2005, and so it shouldn't be a shock to anybody that was here for that conversation. But there's some history with the Art Center, and I think it's worthwhile to run through this because it's a very interesting way to look at this. There's 6 rooms that are available at the Mendocino Art Center that aren't being used, and so you could technically take 4 units out of that 6 that are available and preserve the 234 cap. And in effect, you could still have 2 more rooms for somebody else to come behind us. And then the town plan update and some of the concerns around that would go away entirely. And I think important way to look at this is actually just to kind of walk you through some of the history as to how they ended up with 19 units on 4.13-1. And so I'd like to direct you to tab 2. For those of you who aren't familiar with the town layout, there's actually 2 parcels that are owned by the Art Center. The first one, the -32 parcel, is their main campus on the west side of town that's heavily developed, and that's the space that most people associate with the Art Center. They also have an undeveloped parcel that's right in front of where the McCallum Suites is, actually right across the street. It was a piece of land that was donated to them by Charles Stevenson. And if you flip to Actually, the next page on that tab just actually shows you that our tenant's actually trying to sell that piece of property at this time through Mendo Realty. But if you flip to tab 3, you'll see within the town plan they were given 19 units, and there were some specific requirements that were laid out in the town plan around those 19 units that were very specific. So they needed to have a coastal development permit. They needed to pay bed tax, imagine that. And they needed to have a business license. Some standard, things you'd think most anyone that would be operating a business and reselling rooms would have. So if you go to tab 4, this is kind of the chronology of how, and this is the important probably tab to understand how they ended up with 19, even though they only have physically 13. Stevenson donated the property in 82. You see the first letter there, and then in 83, he starts to have a discussion about requesting 6 units for the undeveloped parcel. In 1985, when they did the review, if you flip to the next 2 pages, you'll see they listed it as 13 existing with the potential for 6. Again, in 1989, as they looked at the data, they actually had them down for 13. And then in 1990, again 13, and then magically in the actual chart that showed up in the certified plan, they ended up with 19. And then in 1994, if you go to tab 5, you'll see a permit that they actually submitted through the Coastal Commission to try to construct the 6 phantom units on the undeveloped parcel. And obviously those were never constructed, and that single permit that they obtained expired. And as I pointed out earlier, they're actually trying to sell that undeveloped parcel at this point in time. And then importantly, in 2008, when you went out and did your survey, you confirmed that indeed they have 13 units. This is a map of the facility on the developed parcel. You can see there's 13 rooms there. It shows 14, but they didn't want to have the unlucky 13 room. So it's 13, and they also have in tab 6 there. If you turn to that, you'll see a memo that was put together by planning, Fort Bragg, Rick Miller, that speaks to some of the issues they have with this piece of property relative to any kind of additional development. They're well over their 50% lot coverage, where you have a 25% lot coverage zoning, and they're also limited to the 13 rooms on the water. So I think I just want to make sure you guys are real clear on the issues that I think warrant you to look at if you wanted to take these 4 rooms. The first one being that they're paying for the 13 long-term residential units, and they although they are renting units out in a short-term fashion, they've never got a business license, they've never filed for a coastal development permit.